Welcome back to another episode of Focus on EDU. I'm Doug Konopelko from CDW Education and really excited for today. Once in a while, the episodes are with new people, folks that are new to our lives, new to our worlds. But today I'm bringing in an old friend. We go back to my district days and just excited to have this conversation with the one and only Pete Gorman. So Pete, I'm going to bring you in, and if you could do a quick intro, tell us a little bit about your world, your work, and your background in education.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Pleasure to be here with you today. Well, I've been blessed to be involved in this work for more than 35 years. I am a retired school superintendent. My last superintendency was Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was superintendent there for 6 years. And prior to that, I was a superintendent in Southern California, a district called Tustin Unified, for 6 years. And before that, I spent my career in Florida in Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties with every job from classroom teacher to being the number 2 guy in Orange County Public Schools going back years ago. And now I do work training and supporting the next generation of school district leaders, where I do leadership coaching. And I also have a partnership with 2 other individuals where we founded a group called the Forum for Educational Leadership. And we are help training the next generation of school superintendents and school district senior leaders. And it's just an absolute blessing. I kind of feel like I've gone back to being a teacher again. And that's a pretty wonderful life. And I love getting to work with you, Doug, in our days when we were partnering together, doing work in Martin County schools in Florida. And Florida's near and dear to me. But now I'm more active than ever because the job's more complex than ever. So that's what I'm doing.
So, got to start with, what was your favorite role in all the roles you had through all the schools and districts? What was your number one?
I most enjoyed being superintendent in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was the most difficult, the most complex, and most stressful. But the reason it was most enjoyable was the impact. I was able to have an impact on the lives of so many children in putting in place the systems and processes and things like that that were truly focused on student learning. And the other couple of reasons why that was most enjoyable for me was, number one, Charlotte is a fantastic community in which to live. And we still live in Charlotte most of the year now. So I love being in that community. The teachers, principals, and students were absolutely outstanding. So it was a great group of folks to work with. And then the final piece, the senior leadership team that I work most closely with on a day-to-day basis, I'd stack up against anyone. So love the Charlotte job for impact and people.
Well, as someone whose team now is called Education Impact, I'm kind of partial to that answer, Pete.
Mhm.
So you mentioned the complexity and the difficulty of the job, and it's been a couple years since you were in that seat, but you've continued to work with school and district leaders around the country. So how has that complexity changed, increased, decreased, morphed? What do you got?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's always been difficult. I was reading some writing James Baldwin did in the 1960s about how complex and how challenging things were in schools back in the 60s. And it's as though you take a couple words out and you read it today and you think, oh my gosh, he wrote this to describe today. It's always been challenging, but I'm seeing it as more difficult. I'm really careful to not say to groups of teachers or principals, I did your job, I know how to do it. I did it in a completely different world. With the involvement right now of social media, with the engagement of political processes focusing on schools, with school boards and the challenges there, recovering from what happened during COVID, the complexity of the work. More individuals are commenting on what is going on, which is good. However, it would be better if more folks were truly informed of all the nuances and challenges and what all is involved. That adds to the complexity. And it seems right now, particularly as we head towards a general election, school districts tend to be more of an avenue in on some political things, which is just part of our conditions we've got to deal with. That's fine. It just adds to the complexity of what goes on.
So, in working with so many schools and districts and school systems, I feel like when I'm doing that work and I'm sitting down and talking with folks, while there are some unique challenges as you go place to place, there are also some commonalities, right? There are some things that could definitely bring folks together. So, what do you feel like are some of those challenges that most, if we want to throw most out there, folks are facing from a district leadership standpoint?
Sure. And I think that's exactly the right way to put it, the way you teed that up, that there are contextual differences, but the types of challenges and issues are very, very similar. Let's start off from the very beginning of the pipeline. Number one, the shortage of great teachers and great school staff is real right now. So that is a challenge. And we're all fighting for people in particular areas as well. Oh, great. We have a shortage of special education teachers. Oh, no, we just got a couple. Where'd you get them? From this district. Well, if you get them from this district, what happens to that, the district you take them from? So we've got that shortage in that piece with what seems to be fewer people are entering into the pipeline of wanting to be engaged and involved with that, as well as there was a pretty good number of retirees that exited from the system. So, number one would be the shortage in pipeline. Number two would be in the work I do with supporting superintendents, a decrease in the desire to move into the most senior level roles for the most effective staff. We still, in many cases, have plenty of applicants for jobs, but the percentage of folks who are what I would call highly skilled, highly effective, and highly qualified is decreased to some extent, which makes the pickings more challenging and more difficult, meaning that there needs to be more support than ever. So I would say that is a piece that is more difficult. And then the other piece to it with the transitions in technology and access to information, it makes it the most exciting time ever with how we bring all that information technology into the classroom, because I think we're making a huge mistake if we don't do that. But at the same point in time, we have to learn how to manage it, how to lead, and how to utilize that. Doug, if I can just tell a little story, I was dropping my daughter Katie off years ago to school. She had a orthodontist appointment. We're late to school, even though you're the superintendent. You still go sign your kid in because you're getting there late. And as I did, the principal came over the PA system and said, "Students, it's now time to power down." And I asked my daughter, "What does he mean?" And he says, "Dad, you know what he means. He means turn off your cell phone. But what he really means is prepare to be bored." And that really struck me. I said, "Wow, prepared to be bored." And I said to my daughter, "I hope that's not true for you." She said, "Dad, you've told me I have one job to do when I go to school. I have one job to do. That's pay attention and be involved and do those things. When you go to your job, do you power down?" I said, well, no, honey, I bring things in and I power up. I do those things. She said, "Dad, I don't communicate with my friends. I don't solve problems. I don't get information in school the way I do outside of school. And now you're telling me you want me to continue to do that and power down." So, to me, one of the big challenges we face is how do we adapt to that, make sure we're powering up and we're taking advantage of those opportunities?
I like it. Power up.
Yep.
Um, so you mentioned the shortage of staff. Is
Mhm.
that, do you also see that kind of taking from one district to help another at
Oh,
those
yeah.
upper levels where, the superintendent goes from district A to district B and there's that trickle down effect?
Yeah, that can certainly be part of the challenge. And leaders should have the ability to select a team that they feel they need to get the job done. At the same time, honoring the experiences and what's gone on long term in a district, it's a huge mistake if you just bail on all of that and it's the complete clean sweep. You've got to be able to bring the best and continue those things. And we seem to have a limited pool. We've got to grow the pool of individuals first. And to do that, we've got to create an environment where people view it as a rewarding job where they can successfully do great work. So that's part of the challenge. And part of that is the climate. And if you look at states where individuals may feel they're under attack if they act as leaders and take on roles, those things can make it much, much more difficult. At the same point in time, public schools are everything that's right about America. Our schools, which are run by the public, that the public has a voice in on, there's a piece for how do we bring that all in a way that's supportive and helps us move things forward for students, though.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think the maybe depending on where you live as well, the everyone has a voice feels good or bad at the time, right?
Yeah,
But to your point, that's one of the things that makes it great.
absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's got a little bit of the be careful what you ask for. When you ask people their opinions, they'll tell you. And people have different opinions of what their experience is like or what it's been like for children or things like that. There's certain individuals that feel that they've done their piece for schools so far and shouldn't have to do anything more, such as levies or supporting school bonds or things like that. Um, what I would say is this: I always have found that I can get refreshed by going to a classroom and supporting students and being with students as they work on the really hard parts of learning. And when I was a superintendent, I found the more often I could be in a classroom, the more grounded and centered I was on the work. So for me, that's what became those moments of renewal. That's what quenched my thirst when I needed it, is being in schools with students. And let's not forget great teachers.
Yeah, same. I know, when you get to that district office world, you're like all adults all day, all adult problems, all adult
Yeah,
conversations. And I used to part of what was under my purview was the media centers, the libraries.
yeah.
And so I would call one of our media specialist librarians and say, "Hey, is there a kindergarten class I can read to today?"
Mm.
And then, whenever I had that gap in the day, that was always a really good, like, recharge the batteries, refuel, to help push forward.
Absolutely. I read a great article in Harvard Business Review a number of years ago, talked about this concept of time boxing. We let everyone put stuff on our calendars and we let others take our time. But what are we doing to box off time for what's really important? And I found that if I put in about a half hour a day for renewal activities, things that rebuilt me, being in a classroom, doing something for personal development or growth, I could grow and renew myself. So doing those types of things. And then if I'm on my way to a particular meeting, stop by a school on the way. But I had to very overtly schedule and plan to do those things. And if I just counted on that my free time will allow me to do those things, never happens. I had to time box or put that specifically on my calendar.
So I'm hearing stay connected to schools and students and teachers. I'm hearing time boxing. What are some of the other things? I know you've been involved in different organizations and different programs that help coach new leaders, right? Help get
Yep.
folks ready for those highest level positions. So, what are some of the main things when you're working with somebody new that you work on with them?
So, relating back to another great article I read years ago in the New Yorker, Atul Gawande is a doctor who wrote an article that everyone needs a coach. And he talks about artists, athletes, musicians, people like that get coaching through their whole life. And it's normal that we need coaching. And he, as a physician, went and got coaching and he found how it improved his practice and renewed and refreshed him on the job. I think everyone needs some type of activity where they're receiving feedback and coaching on a regular basis. Don't care where they get it, but if we don't go out of our way to find our own personal growth and development time, I'm involved in a program called the Forum for Educational Leadership, where we train the next generation of school district leaders, and we do it focused on the more practical applications. There's programs like ours. Find some type of program where you're getting feedback, you're growing, and you're developing. Because what we tend to find happens is when we get busy, we take away from the things that are helping us grow and develop. So we put that as a secondary component and we put all these other areas first. We've got to personally look out for that. And if you supervise individuals, their growth and development and the type of work that your team does, making sure that they find time for that, actually evaluate them on what do they do for themselves for growth and development, and how do they make that part of the work for others. Wallace Foundation did some great research years ago about how do principals increase student achievement. It said they set direction, develop people, and redesign the organization. You'll notice develop people was number two. We need to develop others, but we should also look at self development. I'm constantly reading, I am watching things, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm watching series like yours, those types of things. I'm making time every day for some element of that for personal growth and development.
Do you find that a lot of leaders, because a lot of our leaders are folks who have risen to the top of their field or of their district and things like that? Do you find they get less of that real feedback from folks around them, and it's more like, oh no, everything's great, and then they just kind of keep on going and going? Like, how do you find
Yeah.
that critical feedback that's meaningful?
Yeah, so it's twofold. Number one is the higher you go in an organization, the less folks that tell you factual information that's accurate. Number one, people below you, everything is great, and there's more generalities, and there's much less likelihood to be specific with kind of what, so what, now what. Here's what it was, here's what it means, now here's what I think you should do. And then there is also more blanket, just sharing unhappiness in manners which doesn't add onto it how you could improve the work. So you have to pose the questions to dig a little deeper. Okay, when you shared that, can you tell me what you meant and how the experience would be different for you? So as leaders, the higher up you go, the more I believe you need to have an arsenal of questions to dig in to get to the root of it. You can do things like the five whys. Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Why is that? But whatever tools that you use, you've got to dig in so you can find out the source of what is causing that discomfort or those challenges. And then you can dive into that, and then you can try to put systems, processes, and structures in place to fix those things. You don't want to deal with everything like it's the old Bill Murray movie, Groundhog Day, and everything. Oh, deal with it again, deal with it again. We've got to create predictable systems. And that's what I've tried to do for myself personally, and I try to help others develop predictable systems to handle the challenges that are there.
All right. Any good predictable systems you've built recently, either for yourself or others?
Yes, so there's actually one that I am using that I came across that's been out there forever, but it just got brought to my attention. I asked myself, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said now? Does it need to be said by me? And I'm trying to be much more strategic with my feedback and use what my dad used to call the 4-to-1 rule. You got two ears, two eyes, and one mouth. I'm trying to listen and observe 4 times as much as when I speak. And when I speak, I ask, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said now? Does it need to be said by me? And I'm trying to be more strategic in my listening and communicating. That's what I'm personally working on right now.
Love it. Love it. Well, believe it or not, we are getting close to a close here. So, my last question is going to be, are there any things in particular? You mentioned that you do a lot of reading, listening, watching. Are there any things in particular that you feel like are really moving the needle for you right now in your work?
So I'm spending more and more time thinking in particular about the work of how we support people who supervise principals. So I am doing more and more reading and work related to that. The Wallace Foundation work, this out of the folks at the University of Washington Center for Effective Leadership, the people at University of Virginia, UVA's Darden program that works with school districts as well, and realizing that the superintendent may be the one with the keys, but the principal's driving. What are we doing to support individuals who supervise principals and make sure that that job is more focused specifically on helping them grow as instructional leaders? So that's what I'm reading and thinking about the work of Meredith Honig. There's a whole variety of others. That's what I'm diving in on right now, just thinking more deeply about that.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for sharing some of your stories with us. We're gonna look to power up instead of power down as we move forward here. So thanks a lot, Pete.
Thanks, Doug. Always a pleasure. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can be notified whenever we post new content. Looking forward to seeing you next time.